If you ever wanted a drink with a vodka punnet, now's your chance. Go to BillWhittleCruise.com and find out how. It's the biggest deal in American politics, and nobody cares. I'm talking about impeachment. Hey, everybody, I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, and this is Right Angle, brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. Gentlemen, it is the holidays, and that means that between school stuff, social stuff, family stuff, my wife and I are out all the time. And I got to tell you, this is such a change from 1998 when I couldn't set a foot outside my door without somebody wanting to talk to me about Bill Clinton's impeachment. And this time around, if you aren't online, pretty much if you aren't on Twitter or maybe some parts of Facebook, the silence is deafening. Nobody seems to care out in the real world about what is absolutely the biggest possible deal in American politics. Dan Bongino, I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly, the radio host. Bongino, thank you. He sent a polling outfit out to Saginaw, Michigan to talk to Obama to Trump voters. So we're not talking about, dyed in the red Republican voters here. We're talking about people who voted for Obama twice and in 2016 took a chance on Trump. And they were saying things like Nancy Pelosi is wasting a lot of taxpayer money on a ghost chase. The money she's spending on that to go help the homeless or go towards health care. Not exactly big Republican causes here. Another said Democrats were working to preserve their own position. They don't really care about you and me, I don't think. And a bunch of similar answers like this. So by the time you do get people to say anything about impeachment, even Democrats don't seem to be very enthused. Again, once you're off of Twitter and social media. Scott, what's it like there in deep red Texas?
Well, it's pretty much the way it always is, which is that only hard-charging political geeks really care about the stuff that's going on in the political world. And, some of that kind of rises to the level of general awareness. And majority of the people in the country say they are following the process, but I'm sure they're not watching hour after hour of congressional hearings before the Judiciary or Intelligence Committees. They're not going to watch the majority of what happens in the Senate, should that come to a trial in the Senate. People just, I sit in a lunchroom at a retail store, which is a really big operation. And so there are usually multiple people in there at any given time. And I don't know if I've ever heard anybody bring up that subject. People talk about what's going on at work. People talk about their kids and their sick cat and their, they're not
real life.
They're not thinking about, as much as the 24/7 news people and the Twitterati would like us to think that they are the center of the universe. The vast majority of people have much more serious concerns going on in their life. I went to 3 social events, let's call it that, on Sunday. One was just with one 93-year-old man who went to breakfast with us. And then I went to a little housewarming party in the afternoon. And then in the evening, had a young lady and her 2 kids come over and we celebrated Christmas together. All of that in the course of the entire day. I don't think anybody brought up anything related to politics or the impeachment. We did talk about the Packers, though. I got to say that.
That's a hot topic.
Yeah. And so I think the people in the Beltway need to understand that while they think they're the center of the universe, most people still think of them, as the Constitution defines it, as a district 10 miles square. And as we knew at the time, it's out in a swamp somewhere. And I don't mean that, the swamp creature swamp that we talk about these days. I mean, Washington, D.C. was literally a swamp. So that's where it gets that nickname. So, I actually think that this is a salutary thing for the Republic, that most people have more important things to do than wonder what some remote government is doing.
Indeed. Oh man, Bill, there's a real disconnect here, I think, between the elites and the rest of us, and the things that matter to them don't matter to us. And I don't think that was always the case, or certainly not to this extent. And where you live in Southern California, I mean, I think you could probably go to a Republican rally with a sawed-off shotgun and not be able to hit an actual conservative. So what is the mood out there in California? Is this the talk of the town? Do people care? Why not?
My experience is the mood in California is the same as the mood in Colorado and the mood in Texas. I don't hear anybody talking about it. I don't hear it. Of course, I don't hang out with those people too much. But But no, it's not. I mean, I have not heard one peep uttered about it in a restaurant, in a supermarket, nothing. And I kind of want to go back to what Scott said. I've been through this 2 times previously now. In 73, I was 14 and I was watching the Watergate proceedings leading up to the threat of impeachment. Nixon resigned before he was impeached, but it looked,
Oh, he was going down,
And there were, I mean, honestly, there was nothing else on TV but hour after hour after hour after hour of John Dean testifying and everybody just sitting there and leaning forward, and it was just, you couldn't escape it. It was the entire country because there were serious, serious issues at stake there.
And there were only 3 channels.
That's right. But those 3 channels were all locked up. And I mean, all the time locked up. I seem to remember it's like a wasteland. It's like, is this thing ever going to end? And then I saw it again in 1998, which certainly occupied more of the public mind space then than it does now, but wasn't at the level of 1973. And then I see this and nobody's saying or thinking or speaking anything, which tells me that the events of 1973 were very, very important, that there was a serious issue going on that really was worth the attention of the American people, that in 1998 you had the President of the United States lying on videotape.
Yeah.
But he wasn't lying on videotape about anything that was particularly destructive to the country. It's perjury and the character issue and all of that, but it's not him lying about, payoffs from the Russians or something, because that's his wife's job. And then in this go round, nobody seems to care and no one is very interested. And the reason is because I'm not saying everybody knows that there's nothing to this, but I am saying that just about everybody knows that nothing's going to happen because of it. It was known from the beginning that the Senate would have to vote for Donald Trump to be removed from office. And with a stronger Republican majority in 18 than we did in 16, that seemed exceedingly unlikely unless monumental evidence came out that was just orders of magnitude beyond what we're seeing in this little peccadillo. So that evidence has not proceeded to appear, and it's not going to appear because it's not there. And so people look at this knowing that it's kabuki, and that's all it is. It's just kabuki. And my segment on Right Angle this week is an idea of maybe doing a brushback pitch against this kind of kabuki. But no, Steve, no one's talking about it here because no one takes it seriously. And that's yet another American institution destroyed by progressive politics for short-term gain.
Steve, I think there may be one other factor here too, by the way. It's just, if I get a moment to surf around the channels on my TV, there's nothing in my head that's gone, hey, let's see if we can find something that'll make me feel bad. See if we can, is there anything on here that can make me angry? No, like when I get home, my wife's like, what do you want to watch? I'm like, let's watch The Voice. People will be singing, it'll be funny, and we can be happy.
There you go. Put on The Mandalorian. My wife and kids and I are really enjoying that show.
We watched it last night again.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I love the streaming thing. So you don't have to be there at Friday night at 7:00 or whatever the hell it is. Wow, folks. Scott mentioned this might be salutary, and that reminded me of something I read in a George Will column probably 30 or 40 years ago, back when George Will was still making a lot of sense, and he was talking about low voter participation rates in this country and how they were so much lower in even in presidential election years than they are in European countries or Australia or all these other places he could mention. And he said this is actually a sign of the political health of our country. If the government is too big, if you are too angry, if you are so upset about everything it's doing that you've got to get out there and vote one way or the other, then that is a sign of some serious political dysfunction in your country. On the other hand, if things seem to be going pretty well, so much so that you can't even be bothered to show up at your voting place and spend 15 minutes in line and punching out a card, then, maybe your country's in pretty good shape. And that has, I think, been the case more or less for our country here. We do have, though, a very big disconnect between what our governing elites and our cultural elites think is important and what the rest of us think is important. And one of the reasons for that in this particular case is that we can't actually say, well, that's the crime. With Nixon, there was a break-in, there was a cover-up. a little deal followed by a much bigger deal that the president was personally involved in. That rose to the level of impeachment and also rose to the level of removal from office, which is what I'm sure would have happened to Nixon had he not resigned. In Clinton's case, lying under oath, that rose to the level of impeachment. It did not, however, rise to the level of removal from office for reasons that I think Scott or Bill already went into. And in this case, it was Congress went looking for dirt. They found something they thought might stick, and now they're pursuing it. And Americans generally have a big collective yawn over this. But, I look at this disconnect and I look at the fact that Washington has never been bigger or spent more or regulated more. Well, some of that's changing. But we have this huge government, and yet people seem to still be mostly free of it. It's not bugging us so much as you might think with all of the taxing and spending that's going on. And our cultural elites have never been richer, but I'm not sure we've ever thought less of them. And so we're pretty much going about our daily lives, going about our business without worrying too much about any of this. And that might not be the sort of constitutionally structured liberty that we as Americans would prefer to enjoy, but it's a liberty nonetheless. And that's a really good sign. I feel good about that. I hope you do too. And that is your right angle on that, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. Remember, please, the content like this needs sponsors like you. So if you like stuff like this, please click on over to BillWhittle.com. We would love to have you on board. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.